Every science, fen, and the Arabs traditionally called a branch of knowledge a fen. The art of, like we talk about the art of poetry, or the art of this, or the art of medicine. So it's very similar to that idea. The fen is the art of something. So everything had these, every art has 10 mabadi, or beginning points. Al-haddu is the definition of a thing. And so the definition of something is getting to the essence of it. And one of the things about modern people is that they don't really know hudud anymore. Like in Arabic, tilka hudud Allah, fala ta'taduha. These are the limits that God has sent. And so don't transgress the limits. The limits of language are the definitions, the had that you use. It's very important when we speak that we understand the words that are being used. One of the great problems in human societies is the breakdown of communication. If I use a word like freedom, what is the definition of freedom? Americans are always talking about freedom. What is freedom? Hurriya. Because in Arabic, freedom is very different from the definition of freedom in this culture. For instance, freedom in the pre-Islamic culture, the hur was in contradistinction to the slave. So a free person was somebody who was not a abd. The hur and the abd. Now, one of the interesting things about Islam is it makes you Abdullah. Now, if you're Abdullah, what does that mean in the relationship to everything else? You're free. Because the ubudiyya is only to Allah. It's not to anything else. And so, the hurr, the Arab poet says, Al-hurru abdun ma tam', that the free man is a slave as long as he's covetous, as long as he's greedy, as long as he wants. وَالْعَبْدُ حُرٌّ مَا طَمَعَ, and the slave is a free man if he's content. Which gets to the essence of the Arab understanding of freedom before Islam. That freedom is moral freedom. It's freedom from want, not freedom to. In our culture, freedom has almost been entirely defined by freedom to. Now I'm using this just an example because I could give a whole talk just on freedom and the different ideas about freedom, but I'm only using that as a segue into the idea that when terms are not defined, miscommunication arises. So if you're talking about aggression to me, and your understanding of aggression is my understanding for terrorism, we don't have a dialogue. So you're saying I'm an aggressor and I'm saying you're a terrorist this is like the Arabs who say, one of the Jahili Arabs was asked, what is oppression? Ma huwa haddul jawr? What is the definition of injustice? And he said, when my neighbor comes and takes my goats and my camels and my women, because they had razaya, they had, the ghuzat, the Arabs in Jahili Arab, they used to go and attack the other people. And he said, well, so what's justice? And he said, when I go take his goats and his camels and his women. So the Arabs also say, ba'ukum tajurru wa ba'ila tajur. Your preposition works in the sentence, but you're not granting my preposition the same agency. That's a grammarian's way of saying the same thing. So a Yemeni told me, he said the whole problem with America, he said it's like the wolf that came down and the sheep was drinking from the pond, and he said I'm gonna eat you. And he said, why? And he said, "Kaddart alayya al-ma." You know, you got the water all muddy. And the sheep said, "When?" He said, "Last year." And the sheep said, "I wasn't born last year." And the wolf said, "Well, your father did it." So